Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in today's topic, we are going to revisit our entire Power Platform from the perspective of interview preparation. So it's a crash course where in just 20 minutes you would able to just revise all the concepts which we are having in Power Platforms with the latest releases. And I think like 2 years back, I did the initial Power Apps crash course interview, and it was responded well with the audience. And now this is the time to actually give a new interview question set in the context of current Power Apps Power Platform capabilities. So here I am with a new set of questions. And of course, this is not a detailed diving into each and topic. It's just a brushing up of all the concepts and giving you a context like how you can answer the questions which are being put up by the interviewer to you. And of course, I hope like this will help you to prepare for your job role into Power Apps or Power Platform. So let's get started. So the overview and the brief introduction has already been covered like in many of the videos into the when I created for the Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate. So we can just directly start jumping into the main topics and the main questions which can be asked by interviewer. So let's get started. So I've collected 20 odd questions, and most of them like will cover the entire Power Apps. So I would be actually creating multiple videos for this interview crash course, one on Power Automate, and another could be on Power Portal, and as well as on MS Dataverse specifically. So today's one is Power Apps only, targeting to the Power Apps, and a bit of other Power Platform too. All right, so question number one, what are new features or releases in Power Platform? So by this, you should be knowing what has been released into the Power Platform recently in past 6 months. So that is a knowledge check for you like by the interviewer where you should be able to answer the new exciting things which are in preview or in experimental. So for example, I can give you a few pointers in Power Apps in the just wave one in 2023. Like we have newly integrated open AI capabilities where we have the co-piloting, and we have a lot of like exciting around co-piloting where we can type up our questions or problem statements into Power Apps, and then the co-pilot will generate the entire application in one shot for you, where you can of course customize it further. So that's a major the release I would say in quarter one. And then we have the Power App pipelines created, which actually simplified the ALM process of managing any Power App from dev environment to UI to prod. So you can actually very well go into the Power App pipelines videos and the content over the internet to get a detailed about it. But of course, like it's again one of the exciting stuff which has been rolled out. In Power Apps portal, we have the new this pack PAC CLI tool integrated, where like it gives us a capability of packaging the stuff into Power Apps portal, where the custom solution can be packaged. So that is again rolled out recently. And if I talk about like couple of things which are rolled out into Power Automate is increased focus on RPA. So using PAD Power Automate desktop. So there's a few actions which used to be into preview like SharePoint actions. Those are rolled out as in fully with the Power Automate desktop, and there are like multiple enhancements with the user web extraction tools, the desktop extraction recorders tools. So those are there. And if I talk about the other area, Power Virtual Agent, then it's again a code graphical interface has been introduced, which actually tightly integrated with the AI capabilities. So that is there. And with in context of Dataverse, like the more deep integration or the linking of MS Dataverse is done with the Azure Snaps for the big data analytics and data insights. So that is related to Dataverse. And if I talk about the granular level, like we have few of the preview stuffs, introduction of PDF functions, then parsing any JSON functions, parse JSONs. Then also like we have Git enabled, where we can maintain our app into the Git. That actually gives us a versioning control over the Power Apps. And we also have recently like the new hub portal for Power Apps, where the company organization can collaborate and share the knowledge. So those are few new releases or the wave 1 releases in 2023. And so you should be able to talk about those new feature releases. That gives us confidence that yes, you are up to date with your knowledge. So that was in context of question number 1. And when I go to question 2, question related to licensing of each component, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Virtual Agent. So yeah, so if you are attending interview for architect role, solution architect role, then these stuff should be on your tips, that how the licensing should work and what is the latest trend or the changes in the license. So latest one is like pay as you go with the Azure subscription. So that is still in preview, but you should be aware about the individual licensing product. For example, if I talk about the Power Automate license, then it's per user, $15 per user per month license is there, and what capabilities it does introduce. And if I talk about the attended RPA capabilities, what is the cost of that per user license. So not into the very accurate fashion because it keeps on changing, but at least you should be having idea. For example, per user plan with attended RPA is $40 per month. And if you wish to have the per flow license, then it comes with $100 per month, and minimum set you wish to have is 5 flows. And plugins are also there. Like if you wish to buy the plugins for AI, then that for AI builder is $100, $500 per month, and unattended capabilities with the pad that against like comes with this cost. So those sort of figures, if you can actually memorize that, then that would give a good impression of you, and that would actually like generate a confidence into the interviewer that you are aware about your products. And when I say about Power Apps license, it's $5 per app license is a standard which is running right now, and $15 per user license with the unlimited app plan. And again, like as we are moving towards the Azure pay as you go licensing, so whatever applications or app the user is using, so it will be billed based on monthly on that product, but it's still under preview as of now till date. So that brief about licensing stuff you should be knowing. And of course, like Power Virtual Agent licensing, so how many instances you can have. For example, $200 package gives you 2000 sessions per month, and if you wish to have add-on, then $100 per month for additional 1000 sessions would be there. So that sort of figures, if you have if you can keep in your mind, then that would be good. So let's move to question number 3. What are the design rules to follow? So, and when building a new application into Power Platform. So this is a critical one because here interview would like to test your design skills, what factors or criteria you actually follow, you keep in your mind whenever you are kind of with a new application product development. So first of all, what I prefer is to start thinking about database. So what are the actually database requirement? So that on that basis you have to decide like if your existing data, if you have any existing data you need to migrate, then which platform you should migrate, what are the data flows or connectors you would be thinking about. You have to start with the data modeling stuff first. So it could be MS Data Source, MS Dataverse as a data source, or SharePoint if it's a minimal record. So you have to think about that designing a database from the foundation, and then think about the authentication authorization requirement, that strategy, how you would be protecting your data. So that could actually lies with the environment level protecting, where environment would be secured with the AAD security groups. Then it lies at the application level, where you would be given the access to the specific users to access those apps. And as well as it lies at the database level as well, where you would be actually creating security groups. And then with those security groups, you would be refining like what level of security you would require it. It's at the organization level or business unit level. So those factors you should be putting up, those terms you should be sharing with the interviewer, so that your knowledge of database security architecture should be clear. And then of course, like you have to think about the user interaction, the rich user interface is required for that application or is standard one. What are the user requirements, how the user would be onboarded with that application. So that factor should also be considered while designing any application. So it comes with the each area, the database, the UI, and the authentication, the security part has to be come up with a individual thinking with each component topic, I would say. So you can dig into more how you can actually design a good database with a MS data source, how you can decide, how you can control the security into MS Dataverse. So I have created individual topics for into my this video library, and you can very well go to the PowerApps playlist into my channel and then watch individual topics. So that covers the question number 3, and I am actually running fast because there are a lot of things to cover. Question number 4, how would you ensure the data integrity and security in Power Platform? So this is a critical question because if you are attending interview for architect, then you should be this should be your primary responsibility to secure the data. So it should be the data integrity and security should be the prime rule to drive your decisions. So when we think about the ensuring a data integrity and security in Power Platform, so as Power Platform is an integral part of Azure Cloud itself, so data encryption at the rest and transit comes hand in hand and being leveraged with the Azure security model itself, where the data encryption, everything is handled by ADs. So we have to think more about the application level, that what validation rule, what security groups or roles should be created for my data source at data source level, and what should be my data recovery and backup plan for my environment, so that my data integrity can be maintained. So you have to decide on the environmental backup and restore strategy as well. So if you answer in those areas, then that would be good. And then comes the question 5th, how would you troubleshoot problems in Power Platform? So troubleshooting any Power Platform actually comes in various, I would say, layers. So to start, like if your users are facing any access issues at the environment level, that they are not able to access the environment and the apps inside the environment, then the troubleshooting would start at the most top level, at the environment level. So where you can go to the environment, then select environment, check for the user permission, and then you can go for the diagnostic user permissions. So there you can actually see like what roles and permissions is given to a user. So that's the top level diagnostic approach, I would say, like at the environment level. And if the problems are there at the application level, that application is not accessible or loading much time, then you have to go to the application level permissions check, like if application is not accessible, if application is taking more than usual time, then you have to use the monitoring tool, so which is there within the applications itself, where you can actually monitor the actual loading times of each screen, or like whenever you're calling any API to save the data, then how much time that particular call is taking. So with a monitoring tool, you can take a detailed look what individual operations or actions are actually delaying or creating problems. So that's one approach, using monitoring tool. And if your application is having some custom web resources, for example JavaScript or HTML or like something like that, then you have to rely on debugging those JavaScript as a web resource. So you can very well use help of F12 dev tool, where you can debug your JavaScripts which are embedded as a web resources. And of course, like just to talk about more about the web resources, so what is a web resource is, web resource are actually extension to the customization, where you can integrate your JavaScript file, your CSS file, your HTML file, any of it into your application. That can be model driven app to extend the functionality. So just consider an example where you wish to do some additional operation when some screen loads up or forms loads up into my model driven app. So by inserting a simple web resource of JavaScript and writing the code into that JavaScript, where you can actually extend or use the form context and override the functions of onload or onsave, or access the attributes, then calculating those attributes. So those sort of customization stuff can be done. So it's a way of embedding JavaScript, providing additional extended functionality to your application. So if the problem is into web resource, then you can very well debug that. You can disable that with the flags also. So how to debug, how to disable while loading your forms. You can just use the use of flags equal to disable my web resource, so that web resource would be skipped. So that is again like one way of troubleshooting your application. And of course, like you can use the two inbuilt tools, that is app checker is just to check the formulas or giving any inconsistencies in your application. So it will just give you that then and there, like what probable alarms could be there into your application. Then solution checker would actually check for your business process flows, business rules, your screens, which are there. So you should rely on these 3 or 4 tools: monitoring tool to check the each and every operation performance, app checker for checking formulas, checking the vulnerability into your application, then solution checker. And then question number 6, how to handle Power Apps working with large data set, search or look a few items across million items. So this is a very critical question. And as you know, like I'm already taking these questions at the advanced level, because basic level, I think like uh, most of the person who are citizen developer into Power Apps, they already know those basic questions, how you can actually have controls in it. So these are advanced level or the architect level questions. So how you can handle the Power Apps. So these are major limitation where we have only maximum 2000 records retrieved with the non-delegable functions. When I say non-delegable functions, that means like those functions which are unable to return the data more than 2000. If we are having like millions of record, then of course searching or filtering that specific record which is actually of our intent, then it's quite difficult. So for that, how we can actually retrieve the data which is having large set into Power Apps. So for this, of course, like if you tune up our queries, the delegable queries in a way, then we can of course do that. But the recommended way when you are working with millions of record is to have a intermediate flows in place, and intermediate flows are Azure functions. So there is again one concept, Azure function, which can actually, you can delegate your work into Azure function based on the HTTP trigger, and that does the work for you. For example, uploading a large file which is more than 100 MB, which is a limitation into Power Apps. So that function, that operation can be done with the Azure function, and as well as that function can be done with the Power Flows, Power Automate. So when you are working with large data set, then just think about having this middle processing engine with the Cloud Flows or Power Automate in place, so that you can work effectively with your this larger data set or larger database operations. So just remember that, like for any critical or complex thing, Power Automates are the solution along with the Azure functions. So you can choose any one of them. So for building out any applications, and this is a critical question for app makers, then what principles or the guidelines you would follow to make a robust and an efficient app? So first thing, it actually varies from the case to case, but the first thing which is there is limit the number of data sources into your uh, app, whatever you are building. So if it's a Canvas app, of course, like you can have multiple data sources. So there, try to limit the number of data sources, because if you have more data sources, then the app performance would be slow. Limit the number of rows you are working with. So you need to actually like limit whatever you are retrieving the data, and use on visible functions. These are pretty granular level techniques to handle it. Don't use on start app. So that's a pretty much performance intensive operation. So don't use that. Use collections to work with the data, then to transform the data if you wish to, rather than like making again a call and then getting the data back to the app. Then use concurrent functions. If you are performing multiple operations, try to use the concurrent functions. Use delegable functions, and with the delegable queries. So that's a key. So we'll talk a bit detail about the delegable queries. I'll take that. And then we have to actually make a plan, like if what testing mechanism we are actually following for app. So that's test tool, integrated test tool is there, where you can actually write your test cases. and that gives us a capability of writing the same test cases which we used to do in the N unit and J unit. If you are already a citizen programmer, you must be aware about that. So test tool is there where you can actually write those test cases to the regression testing whenever some changes comes to. So these are few guidelines which you need to follow while developing any application into Power Apps. And there are few, could be more, but it's kind of, as I said, like it's just a crash course. So I'm just giving you a brief what should be done. And question number 8: if Power Apps stuck on load on unsafe, how you are going to troubleshoot? So we have already covered this, like how we can troubleshoot the application, troubleshoot the environment earlier, but this time with the application. So of course, there is a monitoring tool where you can monitor the each and every operation, actions, execution time, and you can see like what actually, which call or which operation is taking or stuck in your application. So the answer is simple: monitoring tool would help you out. How to use test tool? So again, like whenever you are building any application or app, so the critical part is like to keep it tested or properly maintained for the deployment. So test tool is an integrated design ID which comes with a Power App Studio only, where you can write your test cases, you can very well execute them. Then we are here at the question number 10: how to handle delegable queries when working with larger data or the complex data types. So what is a delegable query? First of all, so it's having three fundamental parts to it: functions, field types, and operators. So if your function, field type, or operator is giving you problem, then you will start getting the delegable warnings. And what is that? That you would not able to get the records more than 500 or 2000 based on your app limit. So you have to tween up your queries so that you can able to get the data out of your more than those records, more than 2000. So for a query to be delegable, the function needs to support the delegation and all field types which are being queried, and all operators needs to be delegable as well. So these three, combination of these three actually makes you work with your larger data set. So when I say like functions, so recommended functions for delegable operations are filter, lookup, and don't get this lookup confused with the SharePoint lookup. So it's related to looking up into your data source and filtering up. And field types which are delegable are single line of text, number field, and date and time. So other than that, like any of the field, if you're working in SharePoint, then just try to use a calculated column to store that into a single line of text so that it can be work as a single line text. So these three field types are delegable, other than complex types, person, group, choice, and lookup. So that should not be used into your this delegable calls of the functions. And the third part is the operator. So we should be considering the delegable operators only. So there are many undelegable operators: less than, greater than, equal to. So we have to try to use the delegable operators only. And we also try to restrict the use of is blank. We can have the alternate of using that is blank. So for example, filter and data source list name, then title is blank, title should be replaced with title equal to blank. So that's how like it start giving me the delegable function rather than like non-delegable function. So these are small things which we have to keep in mind while working with the delegable queries. So let's move to the question number 11, to the next slide. So how to handle errors on success on if error. So it's a handling error. We have the inbuilt functions into our Power App screen on success or on error functions. And if we are working with on something like on not on save or error, then probably like you can use if error function. So to handle the errors, and while doing the patching the records as well, with if error returns you some error, then how you should be showing up that error. So that's how the error being handled into the Power Apps. And how to handle long running screens. So again, like this is the same question, but in a capsule in a different way. that how you are going to manage your screen to perform well. So again, like you have to dependent if something is taking time, some save operation is taking time, then you have to delegate that operation to your Power Automate to do that asynchronous saving, and you can still like go to the next level, I mean next screen, and the saving or the longer running operation can be handled by Power Automate or Azure Functions based on your requirement. This question number 13. So the numbering is not good, but still we can say like this question number 13. PowerApps code review tool, practice or tools. So yeah, how you would ensure that your Power Apps is built in a guided design principles. So post creation of error, is there any tool you can use? Of course, like there are few tools which can be integrated with your Power Apps and which can actually you can use to check the code quality of your Power App. So the Power App CAD tool is there which can be integrated. So again, like it's open source, you can simply try to use that. Now going to question 14, what is PCF? How to deploy custom codes? So PCF is Power Apps component framework that gives a capability to developers or app creators to create code components for your either model-driven app or for Canvas app. So that enhance the actually purpose of your controls. If you wish to have some customized control, of course, like the way to build out that is PCF control. How you can create a PCF component, I have already done a separate video on that. But of course, like for creating any PCF component, you have to rely on the Power Apps CLI. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, then you have to install the Power Apps CLI tool with plugin within your studio so that you can leverage the capability of PCF to create the PCF component. And then once the CLI tool is installed, Power Platform CLI is installed, then you can actually very well create a project, and that project could be like your field set or could be your views. And you can by PCF init command, you can create your project and then you can install the dependencies, whatever is required for PCF, then package your solution, and then again like deploy it in your environment. Either like if it's a Power Canvas app, then you have to actually go to the environment, change the setting of your custom components can be shown into the Power Canvas app for your environment, and then it will start appearing up. You have to add the code component into a Power Canvas app to show that, to enable it. So there's a brief process I've told you, but yeah, there's a topic which is being asked by the interviewer many of the time to check your knowledge into the latest development into the Power Platforms. Now question number 15 is what are plugins and difference between business process flow or plugin, because it will check your capability of how extensively you have worked or leveraged the model-driven app or dynamic CRM to provide or to customize or extend the functionality. So actually plugin is nothing but a custom event handler that executes in response to a specific event raised into the MS Dataverse entity or table. So consider something like that, like if your item is or row is added into your one of the Dataverse table, then it should do some custom processing. So that can be created with plugins. So plugins are .NET code, and it's on you like how you want to write that .NET code. Though like we have the standard execute functions where we can write how we want to interact with the entities, but of course you can include your design patterns, your .NET programming skills into it to make it more perform more efficiently. And the next part is what is the difference between business process flow or plugin. So plugin, whatever actually business process flow can do, like for example calculation of some business operation, some values, or do some processing. Plugins gives a bit more extension to it. So if you wish to like do vast more calculative operation, then would prefer to create the plugins. You have full control over how you wish to like have your operations done. So basically like what can be achieved with the if your requirement can be achieved with the simple business process flow, then I would simply recommend like use business process flow. But your requirement is too complex to be handled into business process flow, and of course you are a professional developer, then go for plugins. how to register plugins. So there's a extension to this previous question, so it can be a follow-up question on to plugins. So we are dependent on XRM toolkit, so I'm just giving you that keyword context that you can try to dig into more. So it's a tool, PRT tool, plugin registration tool, which gives you a capability like once your plugin solution is ready, is signed, the assembly is signed, then you can actually register your plugin assembly and create the event. You can bind up with that event, so it should be fired on the create of entity or some sort of that. So you can take a deeper look by installing PRT at your local, then play around that. So though like as I earlier also said, like it's a brush up of things, it's not the detailed dive in. Of course, like if you wish to have, then you can watch up my the series into Power Apps. So most of the topics are covered as individual topics. Then 17 question is, what are web resources, practical usage or scenario? So I think like briefly we have already talked about web resources. So web resources are the capabilities to provide the customization extension using HTML, JavaScript or CSS. We can embed or bind our these external web resources into one component web resource library, and that web resource library can be integrated with my this model driven app forms, where I can actually extend the functionality. For example, if I wish to do some operation on load of my form, for example some calculation of something, if my contact form is opening, I wish to populate some map based on that address field, then I can have this JavaScript object embedded, then it will JavaScript file embedded as a web resource, then it will do the processing or showing up the coordinates onto the map. So it's a one scenario. And if you wish to like work with the attributes, then you have get attributes functions to work with in JavaScript. So everything starts with the form context. With the form context, you have to take the context of control, get control, and either you can write to the control, get the value from the control. So that sort of custom operation you can do with the web resources. And as well as I already talked about how you can disable, if you don't wish to them, then you have to set the flag to disable your web resource. So that's where like you can work it. You can have a detailed look. I have created one video on web resource as well. The 19th question is how to handle response from Power Automate to Power Apps. With the Power Apps, you have the capability of calling any Power Automate, and as well as you can pass on the input parameters, and as in response, you can read the output from the Power Automate to in Power Apps. So you have that option of returning the responses, and with the Power Apps version 2, you have the extended set of input and response controls. And as well as like there's a follow-up question which comes after this, like if you want to return the multiple values into Power Apps from Power Automate, how you can do, because generally it returns only single value. So for multiple values you have to create some collection and then return that collection to Power Apps so that you can read that into your Power Apps. The 20th question is how to do alleviate actions in Power Apps. Okay, so as we know that Power Apps runs in the context of current user, but sometimes you need to do some operations that requires the elevated permissions. For example, you are working with the SharePoint as data source, but you want to at the same time, if employee is filling up its own data, then one record should be created somewhere into the admin list, which is into SharePoint, but the access is not provided. So for that, you can bind up one Power Automate, and that Power Automate would be running with a connection that has the access to that list. So that the keyword is like you have to have one intermediate Power Automate or flow in place that can run with a connection that has access to your SharePoint list. So that's the answer. 21 question is overall security management in Dataverse. What different level of security can be managed? Okay, so this is in context of how you can have security groups or roles defined into MS Dataverse. So you can talk about the level of securities. You can the row level security, the column level security, and the hierarchical level of security. So these three securities you can talk about. You can talk about the different out-of-the-box roles, system customizer, system admin. Those roles, if you are able to talk about those, that would give a confidence to interviewer that you know about those default security groups things, and as well as how you can create the custom security roles. If you could able to explain about that, then that would be really nice. And you can actually manage the security to the individuals and to the teams as well. So the teams are actually a good way of managing the access. So rather than providing the binding the rules to individual users, you can bind that to teams. So that's a good way to answer your the security management into Dataverse. And the last one, 20-second question is how to create responsive Canvas apps. Of course, so this is a crucial question. So whenever the interviewer want to judge your capability of building out any apps, you should start saying by like you should be creating responsive app using the containers model, vertical, horizontal, and with the latest release, like we have the ease of we have the templates by default templates which we can actually use to create the responsive screens, and that ease out a lot of work. And of course, like along with the containers, you can talk about the components. So that components give you a flexibility to create the reusable code, usable parts which would be used across your application. So you can merge these both answers into one question, and then should be able to answer about responsive and the container or component structure into your Canvas apps. So these 22 questions were like more kind of brushing up your all concepts into the Power Apps. We started with the design, then we took a bit part of security and data handling, and then we took a part of like how you can actually develop the app. So of course, like there is a part, there could be questions related to how you are going to handle the ALM, application life cycle management for Power Apps. And so for that, you can use the Power App pipelines which are released recently, or you can have the Azure DevOps pipelines built with the MS Power Build tools. So that can actually give you a command set to import, export your packages, solutions in a automated way. So you can study and you can try out on those lines. You should be able to do that. And this is more like this topic, today's one, or more related to Power Apps, but we would be having the same interview crash course for Power Automate as well as the detailed one on Power Virtual Agent. So that like you should be prepared about all the components of Power Platform. So that's it for today. I hope like it would be helpful for you, and all the best who are attending interviews. Thank you.